if you did follow it through, you would see that at best, those guys are like drug couriers for a black market network that might be run by Anglo-American intelligence and unwitting patsies to what they're involved in that day. They could have been put in a situation and used as, the term goes, scapegoat. I'll just tell people, Trump gets Ukraine ceasefire. You'd think that'd be a big deal, but like at this point, that's the obvious move. USAID employees caught being ordered to shred all the documents, all this stuff. That's a whole bunch of nonsense that we don't have time to cover. And then Trump victory, Greenland votes for independence, and maybe that plays in. I feel like that would be important if we didn't have this other block that I'll now hit him up with. There you go. There you can have access to see it. Because we do have some more Soros connections to spice up. And I want to point this out. Mike Benz was not on my radar till about 6 months ago. I was a little skeptical of him. I was like, is that the guy from Ancient Aliens? Where's he coming from? How's he know this stuff? What's his experience? I've been studying him. He seems like a nice guy. He seems to have really relevant experience. He seems to know a lot of things that we've talked about for 20 years and artifacts that I've pointed out that nobody else has pointed out. He just pointed one of them out. Now, I don't know that he heard it from us or like any of that type of stuff. Maybe he discovered it on his own. I just like that people like him are pointing out things like Toward a New World Order, NATO and the Future of Europe by George Soros, 1993. And the pamphlet that he shows you in his little report, I have framed in the Autonomy teaching studio behind me. I have an actual pamphlet from the NATO meeting, which there wasn't a whole lot of people there. That was a hard and expensive artifact to gain back in the day. But I was like, it's not a conspiracy theory. Like, I have the pamphlet from the NATO meeting. Like, what else do we need to know? The enemy's inside the house. We got to do something about it. People are slower on the uptake than I would hope for an active immune system for freedom, but we're building it back. We're building it back strong because, like, you know, America's immune system for freedom kind of got AIDS there for a while, you know? So we have a turning point where we can progress beyond that stage of incapacitation to respond thoughtfully and respectfully and legally to these things. But it only comes when enough people know these things like the back of their hand is like, yep, that thing exists. And what are we going to do about it? Because until then, it's our job to keep stacking evidence on the scale until you're like, oh, this is a real thing and we should do something. Yes, please. Yes. For the last 20 years. But at least I haven't had to change too much because it's the same problem every day that we're working on and we're diminishing it. And a lot less people are buying into the rhetoric, the official narratives, all that stuff is getting broken up now for discussion, thoughtful discussion. And what you're going to hear in this next block, there are some challenging facts. There are some challenging perspectives, not for you guys who are regular listeners, but if you're a first-time listener, you might be really challenged. I want you to know that there's knowledge and understanding and artifacts and evidence on the other side, and it's going to be the most fascinating reading that you've ever done in your life because now you can put a point on it. You're like, this thing exists. And I have knowledge about it, and I understand how it relates to other things, and that's useful knowledge, and that'll give you confidence to go out and learn more. So in this block coming up, we have NATO is Soros, and Soros is NATO by Mike Benz. We'll get maybe half of that report. You'll get the gist. Zionism Unmasked in 10 minutes by Really Graceful, which ties into Tim Dillon's technocracy piece. He had some comments this week, which tied into... the Tim Dillon. I'm sorry. That looks like it pasted twice. Or did I not reading it properly? All right. I was scrolling out of order. So it's Mike Benz. It's Really Graceful. It's a Tim Dillon clip. And that sets up the conscious resistance clip about the technocrats and the Zionism. Because Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all these other people in QTEL type of situations are playing into a bigger picture, and there's a big blind spot for a lot of MAGA people, a lot of Trump people. They don't even know what's going on, and it's going to hit them at some point. We would prefer not to get hit and soften that blow. If you are, it's like, here's the knowledge so that you understand the bigger picture. Like, it might not all just be as being presented. There might be some hidden hands still moving things around in a very efficient, effective way that's not necessarily in line with your individual freedom or your family's plans for the future. So I think this is more important, but I do, Colby, want to start this off with the McKinney grills Rumsfeld, because I don't know that we've ever played that in this podcast. It needs to be in the time capsule. And it's good juxtaposition, or if you will, contradistinction between those two things, because it's only when we have comparison and contrast that we can tell the difference. Otherwise, it's all one thing, and that's a monopoly, right? E pluribus unum translates to out of many one. Monopoly means the same thing. You have monopoly money in your pocket. Let's all have fun. Let's go to McKinney grilling Rumsfeld on $2.3 trillion and some human trafficking. Let's see what happens.
Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls? That's my first question. My second question, Mr. Secretary, according to the Comptroller General of the United States, there are serious financial management problems at the Pentagon, to which Mr. Cooper alluded. Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing. And DOD is the number one reason why the government can't balance its checkbook. The Pentagon has claimed year after year that the reason it can't account for the money is because its computers don't communicate with each other. My second question, Mr. Secretary, is who has the contracts today to make those systems communicate with each other? How long have they had those contracts? And how much have the taxpayers paid for them? Finally, Mr. Secretary, after the last hearing, I thought that my office was promised a written response to my question regarding the 4 war games on September 11th. I have not yet received that response, but would like for you to respond to the questions that I've put to you today, and then I do expect the written response to my previous question, hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you, Representative. First, the answer to your first question is no, absolutely not. The policy of the United States government is clear, unambiguous, and opposed to the activities that you described. The second question.
Well, how do you explain the fact that DynCorp and its successor companies have received and continue to receive government contracts?
I would have to go and find the facts, but there are laws and rules and regulations with respect to government contracts, and there are times that corporations do things they should not do, in which case they tend to be suspended for some period. There are times then that under the laws and the rules and regulations passed by the Congress and implemented by the executive branch, that corporations can get off of out of the penalty box, if you will, and be permitted to engage in contracts with the government. They're not generally not barred in perpetuity.
This company was never in the penalty box. If you could proceed to my second question, please.
Should NATO expand? Council on Foreign Relations Task Force, 1995. There's a million of these. I want to get to all of it on Wednesday's stream. He is a stylish dude. I mean, you gotta admit, he doesn't style. In a perverted way, it is the American dream, what Soros did. Immigrant comes over, gets a job on Wall Street, works his way up. 1993. George Soros, the future of NATO. As it is, the UN, as the United Nations, has already failed as an institution which can be put in charge of U.S. troops. This leaves NATO as the only institution of collective security that has not failed, because it has not been tried. NATO has the potential of serving as the basis of a new world order. NATO as the basis of the new world order in 1993. Remember, this is 2 years before NATO would fire its first bullet in 1995 against Yugoslavia. And notice how Soros is complaining. The very first thing he complains about is Yugoslavia. 2 years later, NATO, the basis of the New World Order, would fire its first bullet. Formed in 1949, wouldn't fire a single bullet until 1995. Soros is calling for it right before it does it.
By definition, Zionism is a movement for originally the reestablishment and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation in what is now known as Israel. The movement originated in the eastern and central parts of Europe and became a political organization in 1897. The Zion part of Zionism refers to a hill in Jerusalem. But before we move on, let's make something really clear here. Zionism is not Judaism. Judaism is a religion, whereas Zionism is a political ideology for one type of people. You can be ethnically Jewish and not practice Judaism. You don't have to be Jewish in order to be a Zionist. Even Joe Biden says so.
Early on when I was a kid, I'd say, when I was a young senator, I'd say, if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
Now, as many of you know, I'm from the South, specifically the Bible Belt of the United States, where Christian Zionism is commonplace, or the Christian belief that God's chosen people have a divine right to the Jewish state, also known as the Promised Land. And if you don't agree, then bless your heart, you're literally Hitler. Of course, this belief stems from the Bible, the belief that the Jews returning their homeland is fulfilling biblical prophecy. In the book of Genesis, God called Abraham out of his homeland and made a promise. To your descendants I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates. This verse serves as one of the supporting arguments for Christian Zionism. Bearing that in mind, regular old Zionism allegedly got its start in response to the resurgence of anti-Semitism. What's funny is that among the considerations for a Jewish state were Argentina, Uganda, Cyprus, and even Texas. Throughout the early 1900s, numerous Zionist groups began to pop up across the United States, with various publications serving as a vehicle for Zionist propaganda. The goal was to influence both the United States Congress and the general public, though the sentiment amongst U.S. officials at the time was that Zionism countered both U.S. interests and principles, since it involved matters related to countries other than the United States. But then the world erupted into war. During World War I, which resulted in the fall of the Ottoman Empire, a secret agreement took place called the Sykes-Picot Treaty. And this treaty was whipped up in 1916. It drew out the new borders of the Middle East, dividing the region into states, and under that treaty, Palestine was placed under international control. Post-World War I, the British assumed control over Palestine, and only 1 year after the Sykes-Picot Treaty was signed came the Balflur Declaration. Nestled in a letter between the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour and addressed to Walter Rothschild, the declaration promised Palestine as a home for the Jewish people.
Silverstein that. Pull it. All right, so we got a lot to catch up on because that 2003 video of Cynthia McKinney grilling Rumsfeld, oh, that's just the beginning, because what else did she mention? 9/11 war games. By the way, more than 4 were going on. Let me reach over here to get this book because we're doing it live and you want the evidence. Don't fall down. All right, check this out. This is a book titled Synthetic Terror, not by a Rhodes Scholar. It's a Fulbright scholar. Webster Tarpley was. That's the American Rhodes Scholar system. And we'll just put Kissinger in the age of AI over here in the garbage can. All right, so Synthetic Terror, made in the USA. Now with the 46 drills of 9/11. 46 war games going on while the guys with the box cutters from the caves defeated the world's most advanced military prevention of terrorism system. Very interesting book. A lot of research in this book that you might find interesting. I'm not selling his book. I'm just telling you, this book contains a whole bunch of evidence that Cynthia McKinney wished she had back at that conversation, because those 4 war games, while substantial, those command post exercises that help them respond quicker, right? We're going to play the Peter Power Visor Consultants clip next, because what Myers said also was said after the London 7/7 terrorist attacks, which also had war game exercises going on identical to the events which happened, which didn't confuse them. It helped them discern the terrorist attack sooner, according to the 2 isolated claims that might be connected by Western intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes variety. But the various war games, Vigilant Guardian 1, Vigilant Guardian 2, Operation Global Garden, Operation Northern Vigilance, Operation Tripod was in New York City, set up with FEMA the night before 9/11, and there's video clips of them being there. White House Situation Room holds anti-terrorism training exercise. 9/11 hijacking simulation scheduled as part of NORAD exercise. You have the famous 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report. the E4 doomsday plane, continuity of government in the air that morning, all these things that I said, Operation Vigilant Warrior as well, all these things that I said, how'd the guys at the box cutters do all that? Confuse our entire multi-billion, trillion-dollar system out there? I don't think they did. And when you start digging into who they were, let's follow official story just for a second. 19 hijackers, box cutters. Okay, great. What were they doing right before 9/11? Were these devout Muslim suicide bombers at strip clubs doing cocaine, hanging out where they train CIA and all sorts of foreign kind of Operation Gladio agents working at getting trained at U.S. military bases? Many of them did, right? Not being able to fly a Cessna, but doing these miraculous moves that can't be done in the simulator by professional pilots. There's a whole lot of nonsense. But if you did follow it through, you would see that at best, those guys are like drug couriers for a black market network that might be run by Anglo-American intelligence and unwitting patsies to what they're involved in that day. They could have been put in a situation and used as, the term goes, scapegoat, something like that. So there's a lot more history. You would track it back if you track it back to Osama bin Laden having a headquarters in London in 1996 and MI6 having a long history working with those proxy armies that we talked about a few hours ago from Sinjin Philby in the 1920s. So there's a long and sordid history. And while I set up for the 7-7, I want to show that, Scott and Paul, you got the floor. Let's go here.
I just wanted to comment on the callback to the Schofield Bible, because the end of that, not the Tim Dillon clip, but the one before, Really Graceful, was about the creation of Zionism, and then where did the Christian Zionism come from in terms of that overwhelming support. And from all my research, it's like 1909, the Schofield Bible comes out and gives a version of the King James Bible that is enormously supportive to the idea of supporting the idea of Israel and the Jewish people unequivocally as the chosen. And as it spreads, you end up with this phenomenon of, especially when Israel is created, there's so many people that end up following whichever candidate says they will support Israel because they think it's their Christian duty due to the teachings of the Schofield Bible. And it seems like these are like multiple pieces that are set up at different times in the last 100 to 120 years that are now all coalescing together in 2025. So it feels like a really interesting Game of Thrones storyline when you think about it.
Well, it's a storyline that gets deeper the more you go into it. I found the Peter Power clip. So I'm going to slide this to Colby real quick. And then, Scott, you got room to comment while he's queuing this up. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, just to go off what you were saying, the elaborate Game of Thrones, like it's just, I actually have never seen Game of Thrones, but I kind of know the concept of just like the rival factions and the power players and one thing after another, and it's just by any means of deception or just brute force and everything, and it's like we see that, and it is kind of all coalescing into this interesting time right now where these long-term plans are coming to a head. And we're seeing kind of the culmination of all of it. It's really fascinating in so many different ways. I'm having a great time with it.
I think it's a very rewarding experience when you connect the dots, you know? General Myers, when McKinney was grilling him, talked about like, no, we weren't confused by all these drills going on. It actually helped us respond sooner. You're going to hear the same thing from the consultant that was running the operation that happened coincidentally during the 7/7 London bombing attack from, I think it was 2005.
Always coincidentally.
Yeah, it's always coincidentally. Peter Power, he's going to tell you clearly because no one told him not to say this. This is the beautiful part of this clip. No one told him not to say this. And it bears all the hallmarks of Operation Gladio, MI6, CIA type of, we're going to justify these budgets and grow this need to justify the war on terror. And you can't have that without, you can't have an omelet without cracking some eggs. So I'm going to have Colby play the 7/7 Visor Consultants clip, and then we'll get to the Derek Bros conscious resistance, technocrats, and Zionism. There is a point to all the things that we have moved around in this episode. But I also wanted to show you guys, yes, there's a strong connection between the Fabian socialists, and this is like the British half of the New World Order, and their influence into American history with all these people who took up the mantle of making America part of the British Empire for the purposes of taking over the world, which was the UK, like British Empire goal, the Freemason goal. And Cecil Rhodes said, here, I'll use some Rothschild De Beers money and make a scholarship, and let's make that happen. And then generation after generation of people came along and said, I want to contribute to that thing that's a sure thing. It's a sure thing, just like Hillary Clinton winning in 2016. 98% chance they're going to win, right? And then Quigley writes a little book like Tragedy and Hope, and they're like, no, we'll destroy the plates, and we'll make sure no one reads that book. And then other people come out with books. G. Edward Griffin comes out with The Creature from Jekyll Island, which also plays into the taxation as theft aspect, right? It's an invisible tax. So there's a lot to learn that we're not taught in school. Some of it's just the historical background, and some of it is how do you pay your bills in order to stay alive in a society that very much wants you to be dependent and or just like Thomas Anderson in The Matrix without ever getting in contact with Morpheus. They want that quiet desperation life for you. I think we can do better, but we're not going to do better hoping that Trump takes away income tax. I think you need to make some money and then buy some tax planning strategies from somebody who knows how to do that stuff. There are different buckets and different ways you can manage your business for investment and future and like investing in people and projects and all sorts of cool things you can do before it has to go through that system, because that's how they set up the rules. And there is a saying in Latin, a maxim in Latin. It says, in order to win, we must play their game. We must play their game better than them to win that game. They set the rules. They expect us not to play or to ever read the rules. So learning how to do that and learning how to read between the lies and make decisions that reflect reality so you can get consistent results. These are all part of not only the adulting process, because you can be an adult slave pretty easily, right? This is the adult liberation process for ourselves, because no one's going to come and do it for you. And the universe has it set up that way. There are certain things other people can't do for you. And, freeing your mind, emancipating your mind from mental slavery is something only you can do, right? Yeah. None but ourselves can free our mind. Would be the more poetic, musical way to say it, but I'm not trying to borrow from Bob. He's a good guy. I like him. All right. So Fabian society aside, there's a long and ominous continuity of history that trickles down to what we experience today. And learning that history helps you see clearly through those many decades of their type of activities in this vein of them trying to take over the world. You know, it's a pretty interesting video game they have here on planet Earth, this whole thing going on.
Yeah. And just some of these things that Trump could allegedly be doing to dismantle this great plan. I mean, the hopium is just richer and thicker and purer than I've ever seen in my life. And the whole talk about the IRS situation, it'd be great to have a big tax break and you have more money in people's pockets that pay income tax and all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, the way I look at it, it's like the IRS, one of the ways that they control and monitor us to one of the most effective ways is through the income tax system. So every time I put money, cash that I make on my job into my bank account, I'm just like, shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, because I know that there's an IRS AI thing hovering above watching, you know what I'm saying? It's just like every transaction I do, if I go across state lines to buy a truck or something like that to pay less taxes, just every single thing has to go through that filter of, oh God, I know the government's going to watch and monitor and they're going to try and do something to extract more money or audit me or whatever it is. And so it's like just eliminating that whole surveillance system. If you got rid of income tax, it would allow us in a way to have financial freedom, like just to be able to transact and do private transactions without just this looming eye of the government just right there. That's what I'm most excited about, is removing the potential of removing that whole aspect of the surveillance side of it.
Well, at the same time that you're going to get that, extra $2,000 a month, the streaming services will all of a sudden say, well, now YouTube Premium or Disney or whatever you like, is going to be elevated, and then you're going to have to make choices and be like, you know what? Books don't require electricity. They sit there and wait for me. When I need them, they just do their thing. And maybe people getting back into reading again and relationships with books and actual artifacts instead of a bunch of nonsense being programmed through those mostly woke platforms protected by savvy law firms like we talked about earlier. Like all those big companies are handled by a small coterie of people who guard them and sometimes take out their enemies and opponents in sometimes very public ways. That goes on out there. It's part of how things actually operate, as opposed to like the world that's been pulled over your eyes. Let's say it that way.
Do you mind if I jump in with an idea real quick, or do you want to move on?
No, I just want to cue Colby so he knows. We want the Peter Power 7.7 Visor Consultants quick time thinking to fast time reaction, whatever the nonsense he pushes. I want that played first. Then we go to the Derek Bros because it's more like the Rosetta Stone that ties a bunch of these pieces together. Back to Polly.
I was just going to jump in. I was just, while you were chatting, looking up the 14th and 16th Amendments. I'm a Canadian, so I have to educate myself on your American amendments of your special documents.
Especially since you'll be in the 51st state soon.
Well, because I need to learn them to take the civics test so I can become one of your citizens, apparently. I feel like, and this is a feeling, maybe not a thought, but that each of those amendments came in and kind of shifted what was expected of the people of the country, right? The 14th Amendment, it freed the slaves, but it actually made everyone a citizen, which you're really a government employee of the corporate state to an extent, right? In terms of legally speaking. And then the 16th Amendment was like, we're going to take some of your money. And so I think the idea of eliminating the income tax is great on its surface. And I just wonder if the way they're going to sell that is going to be through like, hey, we're not going to charge you income tax anymore. We're going to shift it to a 5 or 7 or 10% national sales tax, but we're also going to shift to a blockchain-based financial tracking society because Doge has determined that's the most efficient way to avoid quote unquote illicit transactions. And it'll be sold as a transparent way to essentially get everyone on board with the digital IDs so that you can register for this new blockchain-based clean financial system. This is just all speculation from my mind, folks. So feel free to ignore or criticize this idea. But I just wanted to present that for anyone's consideration because I'm trying to think big picture. And I see Mike Benson's got a lot of great work. I see Whitney Webb with a lot of great work, and they're trying to piece together what is the not so much left or right angle, but the technocrat angle in terms of introducing a new technocratic AI-based tracking system, and how would you sell that idea to the American public and then the world? Well, you would sell it as a free system, a transparent system, but ultimately it'll be the only system, so you're beholden to whoever's controlling it, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I see a lot of it's just the be careful what you wish for phenomenon where a lot of these firings that they're doing in all these institutions, it's just like they're just going to eventually replace those with AI. So it's just like this big purge under the color of, hey, we're doing this for efficiency, but then that efficiency comes at the cost of all of these new systems are going to be run by AI now, guys. It's great.
Which comes back to control the government, turns over to who's programming the AI agents, and it all goes back to the Matrix. Mm-hmm. There you have it. Mm-hmm. Fully wrapped.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World Podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.